Hello and welcome. And this is Big Talk for Quiet People with Shola Kaye. And today our guest is Olivia James. And before I introduce Olivia, I just want to read a quick disclaimer because every time we talk about introversion, and I think it's a good thing that people raise this, someone says, well, you know what, you're talking about confidence, but I'm super confident, or you're talking about anxiety, but I don't have anxiety, or and the point that I'm trying to make is that introversion is on a continuum, right? So people experience their introversion in different ways. So we hopefully will be leaving you with some interesting insights and advice, but just take what you think is useful for you and leave the rest. So with that, with that, I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest, Olivia. And what we're going to do is have a bit of a discussion. Olivia is going to answer some questions. And then towards the end of the session, if you have any questions, you'll be invited to drop them into the comments. Bear in mind, I think there's about a 5-minute delay between what you're seeing on LinkedIn and when we're actually saying it. So there's a bit of a lag. So if things aren't quite as kind of smooth as they could be, then please just bear with us. But we're doing our best. So without further ado, or even ado, ado, let me introduce the wonderful Olivia. And Olivia, actually, this series wouldn't be happening if it hadn't been for Olivia and I getting together one day and just having a good old chat and natter about all these things and said, well, we should do a live. So here we are. So Olivia's bio, Olivia James is a Harley Street performance coach and therapist. She treats professional confidence issues, public speaking anxiety, imposter syndrome, and trauma. She's regularly quoted in the press, including the Financial Times, Psychologies, and Wired. So Olivia, time for you to open your mouth and speak. I'm set it up. So so welcome, Olivia.
Thank you. Hello, young lady, as I always call you.
Hello, my dear. And I have a few questions for you. I'm very excited to have you here today. And when I surveyed my audience a while ago to kind of understand what they wanted to talk about on this topic of introversion, some of the comments that came up were things like confidence, anxiety, improving confidence in presentations, getting credit for ideas in meetings. So I'd love to kind of address some of that today, and also share some of my own kind of stories,
Yeah.
and just kind of hear from you. So I'm going to jump in with a question about introverts and confidence, and maybe you can speak to that and what you've seen in your work and how we can become more confident as introverts.
Yeah. Uh, so the first thing I would say is like you need to understand your own needs. So you need to understand uh, how much time to yourself you actually need and like what situations triggering. And a huge part of that is self-acceptance. So because and we're gonna come on to like the what we do to ourselves, but self-acceptance is a really important thing because so often we think there's something wrong with us. Like if we get completely wiped out, like at networking events, or if we if we freeze when something unexpected happens. So you need to sort of like accept like like how your kind of like your makeup, like how you're kind of wired and how you perform best. Um, and then find strategies that work for you. And we're going to come on to some of those strategies a little bit later. But really, yeah, the most important thing is like there is not necessarily anything wrong with you. So you need to find things that work for you because obviously the world of work and the world of like socializing and networking and stuff is very much geared, still quite geared towards people who are outgoing, who don't mind lots of noise and lots of like uh, what I call peopling. And I think especially after the pandemic, I think a lot of people had trouble getting back into the peopling. So I think those are the most important things. Understand your needs, accept yourself, and like find strategies that work for you. And we can come on to some of the more practical strategies a little later.
Mm. And I love that part about self-acceptance, because you know, at my ripe old age, or the age I'm at anyway, I'm sort of coming now to say, well, you know, I don't fancy going to that event, and it's okay. But I think it's fine when you feel that you've kind of reached a certain level in your career, but when you're still, you know, trying to get going, or you've changed career, and you feel like, you know, there's more to do, and you need to be ambitious and get out there, that can really kind of exacerbate those feelings of, oh, you know, I've just got to push myself out, but I don't want to, but I have to, otherwise I won't get ahead. And so it's quite hard, isn't it, to just have that level of self-acceptance. But I think it is so important. The work on that is so valuable.
There is so much research that shows that, like, people who practice self-compassion actually make more progress than people who, and I think we're going to come on to that, like people who like beat themselves up, you know. So
Mm.
and and so there are, like, and obviously avoidance is becomes a huge part of what, like, most people's coping strategy, whether it's like getting overwhelmed at networking, or like having fears around public speaking. Avoidance tends to be the thing that keeps you safe, right? But the title of this, of course, is Ambitious Introverts. So most of the time, if you're ambitious and you're an introvert, you're in a little bit of a bind, right? It's almost like two different, it's almost like two opposing, it can feel like two opposing things, but with the right kind of strategies, you can actually make amazing progress, because you don't have to make friends with everybody, you know. You need to be a little bit more strategic about things.
Mm. And so, in terms of self-talk, because you kind of alluded to this, you know, that voice
Yeah.
that's in your head, which often can be, I'm not good enough, or they're judging me because I'm quiet, or um, I need to just push myself out a bit more, but I don't really want to, or, you know, I'm lacking energy for this, I want to go home, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, talk to self-talk for me, please. How can it make things better or
Yeah.
worse?
um so without betraying any kind of confidence, and the way I talk about my clients is in the most sort of general terms, but like I worked with a male introvert during the pandemic, who's quite a senior, very senior, um and he everybody was having like Zoom work calls, of course, because nobody could go anywhere. And somebody asked him at the beginning of a meeting, what did you do at the weekend? And he completely froze. And later on, he told me, he was like, I felt like such an idiot, because like I had actually done something that weekend. It was like one of the, you know, those times when you couldn't really do. And then the self-talk can really start. It's like everyone's gonna think you're a weirdo. People are gonna think you're a loser. Like, and then the thing could start to loop, right? So if they all think I'm a weirdo, then I won't get any more work. And you know, for some people, it can loop, that self-talk can loop into quite disastrous kind of areas, right? You could start to catastrophize it, like, you know, I'm such a weirdo, no one likes me, I'm never going to get at work again, and I'm going to end up sleeping under a cardboard box in the street. You know, there's the, and it's quite a common thing that people have, but, and it's, so it's completely understandable that we do this to ourselves. But like calling yourself names like that, like in an unhelpful way, actually, obviously, what you're trying to do is give yourself a bit of a slap, right? You're trying to say, come on, buck up, pull
Mm.
yourself together, Shola. Like, what's wrong with you?
Mm.
But what actually ends up happening again is that it basically adds tension. There's a poster of the nervous system behind me. Like, calling yourself names like that and saying, I'm, oh God, I'm such an idiot. Everyone's going to think I'm a weirdo. Nothing's ever going to work out for me because I'm such a weirdo. That
Mm.
adds so much tension to your nervous system, psychologically and physically, that it's actually really unhelpful. So, and I alluded to this earlier on. So self-compassion is better. So that there, And so some strategies you can prepare for those moments where most introverts hate that thing of where somebody suddenly puts them on the spot. Like at work, for example, like ask them a question they weren't expecting, a curveball, even something really innocuous like what did you do at the weekend, right? And it can become like a huge deal that they then start to make into a bigger deal in their head, right? And so there are strategies that you can have in your back pocket so you can prepare for those moments. So in those moments that you don't feel like such a like you know you don't feel so deficient. Like lots of my clients, that's how they feel. They're very successful usually outwardly, but they feel like there's something inherently wrong with them because of how they react in those moments.
So what sort of things, if we're talking about self-talk, if you were working with somebody, because often what I hear, and this has worked for me as well, I don't do it so much now, but if you're going to networking, for example, before you go, prepare a couple of stories about, what you did today, or look at the paper and come up with one story that you're happy to talk about. So you've just got a few pre-prepared things that you can put on the table so that you never seem like you're at a complete loss for words.
Absolutely.
So in terms of prep, if you had to kind of have a few little self-talk things in your pocket, how would you advise somebody? What kind of things would you tell them to tell themselves?
For the self-talk, I think I've got some tips as well for the networking. But yeah, for self-talk, it's more like, so you can call our mutual friend like Esther Stanhope, and bear in mind, Shola and I, readers, ladies and gents, people listening and watching, Shola and I actually met at a networking event. We actually met at the book launch.
I dragged myself there somehow. Yes,
You did.
Yeah.
So dealing with negative self-talk. So you can, and Esther, whose book launch we went to, she says, oh, like call your inner critic. So that's what you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with your inner critic that calls you names, right? So then you can call them whatever, moaning Minnie, like in Harry Potter or whatever, like Shadow Steve, someone who's always got a downer on you, Downer Debbie. And then you can that voice, because usually what that voice is trying to do is actually trying to keep you safe, right? That voice is sort of saying, well, Shola, come on, back up a bit, because otherwise people will think you're weird, right? So that voice is actually in a weird kind of way trying to help you, right? But most of the time what it does, especially when it starts to really spin out, it says nobody likes you, like whatever, you're too much, you'll never fit in, you're never going to amount to anything. It's almost trying to stop you from getting your hopes up too much. So it's sort of a protective thing, but it's usually trying to protect you just very much from a fear-based thing rather than like what's actually possible for you. So
Yeah.
in that way, so whoever, and I recommend clients do this if they suffer from this, and let's face it, most people do, is to give it a name and then say, all right, Shadow Steve or Moaning Minnie, like, thanks for your input, but I think I've got this, Like, so you actually sort of engage, you sort of acknowledge that voice and say, yeah, I see what you're trying to do. I understand you're trying to keep me safe, but let me try this strategy, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, that sounds really powerful, and I need to remember that one. And
Yeah.
when we had our chat a while ago, I remember telling you a story. I was a bit younger when this happened, but I was living in Chiswick at the time, and it was one of those areas where there's lots of yummy mummies, and I was lacking in confidence, had quite a lot of social anxiety actually. And I remember thinking, oh, I need to go to Marks and Spencer's to get some food shopping, and it was maybe 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon, and they closed at 6:00. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to Marks and Spencer. I need to make sure I've got the right outfit. What if someone looks at me, and it wasn't, what if a guy looks at me? It was just more like, what if someone even just glances at me on the street?
Yeah.
I need to be prepared. So I remember just like prancing around at home, like really anxious about this. What am I going to wear? Do I put this on, that? So I tried all these different outfits, and literally by the time I was ultimately ready to go, it was probably like 10 to 6. And I thought, oh, forget it. They'll be closed by the time I get there. So, I mean, behavior like that, I mean, it's very easy if you're an introvert to kind of pin any sort of negative stuff that goes on to, oh, it's because I'm an introvert, right? So would that be because of introversion? I know there's different kinds of introverts. Would that be
Yeah,
social anxiety, shyness? Where did that sort of behavior come from?
I think that behavior, and I think we talked about this a little bit. Like you mentioned this to me at the time, but basically, I think what's at the root of that is like the real me is not really acceptable here, right? This is like I know Chiswick, right? This is a slightly more like a bit of a snobby, and I need to find a version of myself that I think some random like person who I don't know is going to find acceptable, right? So there's a huge amount of projection going on there, and a huge amount of, oh, like working out the outfit. Oh, well, I need to be kind of casual because it's whatever, a Saturday afternoon, I'm just popping out so it needs to be kind of studied, what they call studied insouciance, but that you don't know the kind of rules of that sort of area. So you might be wearing the wrong brand of leggings or the wrong brand of cashmere sweater to go with your leggings and your casual unstructured bag as you're just casually popping in to the so there is so much like emotional kind of and mental labor involved in that sort of like over analyzing of like how you might dress for that occasion, even though it's not like you're going to the Met Awards, Met Gala. Do you know what I mean? You're just popping out to get a few bits in Marks and Spencer's.
It was the Met Gala
So
to me. That's the closest I'm
I
going to
know,
get to the Met Gala.
but basically, so what people do is what you are trying to do with it. You're trying to think. I don't really know this area that well, but I'm trying to, in my mind, think about all these unspoken kind of rules about the right kind of outfit that a woman of my age should wear in this neighborhood, in this store, at this time of night, on a Saturday, or whatever. So there is like so many projections, and then like the not trying too hard, and so there's a brilliant like Oscar Wilde quote that came into my mind when I thought about this. It's from The Importance of Being Earnest, and where she says, "Come on, dear Gwendolyn, we've already missed 5 if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform." You were kind of in your mind thinking you were going to be exposed to like somebody's internal comment in the checkout queue about, oh, look at what she's wearing, or do you know what I mean?
They don't care. No one cares. No one
No,
cares.
exactly. But I think that's so that sort of that it's hard to say exactly where it comes from, but it's definitely a feeling of like the real me, like just popping into the shop, just wearing any old thing is not acceptable here, and that is very much like your projection of like, and obviously this is a long time ago, right? This is a while ago. So you're a very much a different person. But that's, and for lots of people it is that. Like if I go to this if I go to, I'm going to a networking event tonight and I'm thinking, whoa, if I wear this brand of linen trouser, is that going to be acceptable? Do you know what I mean? If I wear my flip flop like loafers, are people gonna, the projections could be, if I wear those shoes, are people gonna think, oh,
Mm.
oh, I wouldn't have worn those. But it's all projection. It's all in our minds, right? And the most kind of confident people really just wear what they want and like don't worry too much about what other people think, because
Mm.
it's about the real you, isn't it? It's not what leggings you might be wearing.
Mm.
Just out of interest, what are the kind of outfits that you were trying on? Do you remember?
They weren't anything fancy, just It
No,
wasn't even
exactly.
nothing was branded even. You know?
No, exactly.
I'm not a brand person really. So that was what was so funny. But I know we will talk about communication and networking in just a moment. But I also want to talk about this idea of self-fulfilling prophecies, because I see that we have someone on the call, B, who had talked about when she was younger, people said that she was shy, and so she started to behave like a shy person.
Yeah.
And I was speaking at Imperial College a while ago, and we were talking, just doing a sort of fun exercise that involved some labels. And people were saying, well, hold on, what about self-fulfilling prophecies? So I'd just be interested to touch on those and see if we do, because I find it quite empowering. If I say I'm an introvert and I'm not going to do da-da-da, or I feel this, this, and this, I find it empowering. And I don't think it limits me, because I'm aware of the range of behaviors that an introvert can, I can still do certain things. But if you've got a more limited perspective on what, group X or label X, how they behave, can it then turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy? And so these names, titles and things, how useful are they and how limiting?
I think what's called also at the at the an aspect of your question is also that some people will use it as an excuse, right? And as I was reminded when I was thinking about this, about the Armstrong and Miller, the two comedians. They've got the sketches with the pilots, the black and white, the pilots who are from the Second World War. They speak in like street speak. They go, have you not seen it? It's absolutely hilarious. So they're pilots in the Second World War, but they're like, well, I said to the man, no, I can't do it because I've got a condition. And it's about like sort of like using their condition, whatever it is, as an excuse to not be able to do things. I've got a note and everything, says one of them, and in one of them, he's like, he says he can't do a certain thing because he's got a verruca. But what's at the heart of that is like, is it, some people do like use a label as an excuse, right? And there is a fear in that as well. It's like, it's almost like if you self-disclose as an introvert, you might be thinking other people are going to think I'm a bit whatever, I'm just not trying hard enough. There's a lot of self-judgment often in this related to this as well, right? So I was also reminded of a South Park episode for people who don't know. It's a really irreverent like cartoon series in America, and one of the little kids, Cartman, he's a little fat kid, and he goes to the doctor, and it's an episode about it's called the Buddha Box, I think the episode. It's about anxiety, and he says to the doctor, anxiety, is that cool? And the doctor says, and bear in mind this is satire, doctor says, what it really is more than anything is an excuse to be lazy and lame to everyone around you. And the little kid goes, perfect. So for a lot of people, the fear is that if I identify as shy or introverted or having social anxiety, then that's kind of my lot. Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like that diagnosis means that I don't really, that I can kind of get away with things. And so again, when we get to the title of the ambitious introvert, we've got that balance, we got that tension, haven't we? So I think for lots of people, there's a lot of self-judgment, and there's also a lot of judgment from other people about what any of these labels might mean.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think again, because even people that I think are quite in the know, when you say, oh, I'm an introvert, oh well, I'm sorry to hear that, hopefully soon, that sort of thing, right? You're like, hold on a second, I'm actually quite okay with this. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen, I think, as well, and also not allowing, like, claiming the name for the
reclaiming it,
exactly, but not allowing it to kind of stifle us or to limit
us. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or so using it in Cartman's word, using it as an excuse to be lazy and lame. Cartman's in the inimitable South Park way.
I'm this, but I don't have to
Yeah, yeah,
Avoidable
yeah.
behaviors. Yeah, totally. So let's talk about networking. I mean, because before we came on this, I was talking to Olivia about an event I have to go to in a couple of weeks. And I'm just thinking, oh, I would just love to blow off this event. I really don't want to go, but there might be some connections there. Is it worth it? So that usual kind of,
Yeah.
and you never know. You never know if it is or not beforehand. So let's talk about, networking and how we can make that more palatable if it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. More survivable, exactly. So I'm sure you already know some of this stuff, but like for me, it's like, and I'm an ambivert, right? But I am definitely not an extrovert, so I definitely need my downtime. So I'm kind of in the middle of the scale. But if I don't get my downtime, it's bad news, right? So number one is like when you go to a networking event, have a plan to protect your energy. Because if you get too wiped out, it's really not good. It's not good for you, not for everyone. So as you mentioned earlier on, like do your research about who's going to be there. Who do you actually want to talk to? Who do you think you should talk to for networking event, and who would you actually have fun talking to? And then think about, is there a specific outcome that I would like? Sometimes you go to a networking event, like when you and I met, I mean, I just thought you were great, and I think we met and had a coffee. I wasn't thinking, oh my God, like in 5 years' time, Shola's going to invite me to do a LinkedIn Live. That wasn't part of my, like, you know what I mean? That wasn't part of my kind of, or like, oh, Shola's going to refer clients to me, which you've done very kindly. I wasn't part of my strategy. I was just thinking, oh, she looks really nice. I like her. I'd love to have a coffee with her. That was my kind of outcome. But for some people, of course, there are certain professional networking events where you kind of you might want to get on somebody's radar, right? Somebody in the industry that that you think, oh, at least I want them to now know what I look like and have met me. I might know them from LinkedIn, but now they kind of know me. Um, for me, I personally prefer to get to events early. So I like to get there early, whether it's a morning event or an evening event, because most people are going to be sober when you get there, even in the morning or in the evening. And also, uh, it's kind of easier to find people to talk to if it's relatively quieter, I find. And then talk about a third thing. So I was recently at a networking event and I just got chatting to people. And I was like, it was a morning event. So I was just saying, oh, what are the pastries like? And we got chatting. And then turned out this lady was really interesting. I like there may be some professional stuff happening. Or like I was at like a massive conference a while ago and I spotted a story on BBC. I was like, you know how it is. You kind of look on your phone. I saw that story on the BBC News about all those employees in America getting fired from Wells Fargo for wiggling their mouse. So I said to like somebody nearby, I was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this? Like, what do you think of this?" Right? So we were talking about a third thing. It wasn't, and then you sort of get a sense of how willing they are to talk. So you don't do that thing which most introverts hate, which is like, "Who are you? What's your name? What do you do? Why are you here?" Which can be really like it can be really confronting, and most of us don't really like that. So it's kind of much more kind of elegant and gentle to talk about something not right, direct and confrontational in that way. You
Mhm.
sort of talk about something. Oh, what do you think of this? What do you think of the coffee? Or what, something, and then sort of gently ease into something a bit more natural. Um, for people watching, our mutual friend Esther knows somebody called Will Kintish, who's the king of networking, and he's brilliant with introverts as well. So, if anybody watching, if you want any more tips apart from the ones I've given you, check out Will Kintish on LinkedIn. He's got really good events, and he's very introvert friendly as well, and shy people friendly. So he's
Mm.
definitely somebody to check out.
Interesting. And I think from my perspective, I've got a different strategy in terms of I tend to get there late because I typically think, oh, I don't want to go, don't want to go, don't want to go. Oh, go on, you got to go. So I get there late, but then I end up being one of the last people to leave because I sort of warm up into it, and then I'm just kind of hanging around at the end, kind of talking to the
Yeah.
last few dregs of people that are left
That's how I met you, right at the end.
behind. I think another thing about networking, because they often say, well, pace yourself, it's okay to
Oh
take a
yeah.
break. But I envisaged myself at this event, in a couple of weeks. And it's one of these where it's a kind of dinner and everyone's seated. And me thinking, okay, I'm just going to take a breather and sit here quietly. But then feeling really embarrassed, like, oh, but they're looking at me and they probably think I've got no friends and I can't hold a conversation. And why aren't I amongst that group over there they're all so animated,
Again, the
and
self-talk,
again, like,
the
yeah,
self-talk, the
yeah,
self-judgment,
yeah, yeah.
and the
So
projection of what other people are going to be thinking. That projection of, oh, they're all going to think I'm a weirdo or whatever it might be in your case,
mm,
right?
mm,
One other little thing for me is like if I was at a networking event a while ago and it was full on people, like thousands of people. It's really full on. So occasionally I will just pop out, right? Just pop outside, just get a bit of fresh air, like look at the trees or whatever. And often you'll find some smokers outside, and even if you don't smoke, they're actually good people to talk to as well, because
mm,
it's kind of a different environment and it's usually less noisy. Because for a lot of people, that noise, that crowd noise, can really get to people, as well as that really strong. Usually, it's quite harsh lighting in these events as well. So that pop out, just pop out for a few minutes and take a little breather.
mm,
And even for some introverts, like for me, like even if I need a little break, I'll go outside, and even in most hotel car parks, you'll find a little shrub or something to look at, or some flowers, or some and that can be quite calming. Even just getting a bit of sunlight, a bit of fresh air can actually help kind of
mm,
recharge your nervous system a little bit, because often it is the nervous system that gets quite overwhelmed in those situations.
yeah, that's interesting. And I think, if I do go to this event, if I do take those breaks, the talk needs to be, this is my choice. I'm
Yeah,
choosing to have a quiet moment. Whatever
exactly.
anyone thinks of me, if they think I'm some loser because I can't sustain a conversation, if that's not the case, I'm just here to have a
Exactly.
break and then I'll come back and do it on my
Yeah.
terms. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, what I mean, like on most of my training, I've done like tons of professional training, like all over the world over the years. And even at those kinds of, like when I'm having a full day or whatever training, I will often choose to have lunch by myself, even though
Mm,
it might not seem very sociable. I just need a little break from that peopling, and that's what I need. And I'm cool with that. Do you know what I mean? I can
mm,
always like do socializing later, but that's for me, that's what works. And I've kind of learned to accept that now, you know. So I don't have to start thinking, oh, everyone's gonna think, oh, what's up with her? Doesn't she too good for us or whatever it might be.
mm.
But I mean,
Yeah.
but you can obviously say that to people as well. I will sometimes say, actually, I need to just have a bit of downtime by myself. Nothing personal, but I'm gonna have lunch by myself. And
Yeah.
like put headphones to your friends, people, like introverted people especially. Take some headphones and have a bit of downtime. That can really help as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know that a lot of the work you do is around working with people who have to do presentations and public speaking or speaking at work. And we'll talk about this in more depth on Friday with the guest then. But I just wanted to talk about that too, because for so many, it's a huge thing. And there are many introverts who are excellent speakers and they find a way to make it work for them. But many who, if you've got to do like a casual thing at work or something here, something there, but it's not something you have to really dig into, it can
Yeah,
be a lot, because you don't have to really find your own strategies because you're just doing it on a casual basis. So
yeah,
any thoughts about that, Olivia?
yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely right. Like take time to prepare. So there are some good little formulas about how to get a point across, right? So my friend Graham Davies, he has the say it, support it, shut it formula. You've got formulas as well, right? You need to find a little framework so you can quickly pull together a point. So even if you don't have much time to prepare, Usually you'll have like 1 or 2 minutes. And even for the unexpected. And the second thing is like, even if you are called on to do something like more or less spur on the of the moment, you can take a little breath. You can take a little bit of time to think. Like even a pause to think doesn't seem, in your head it might seem like a really long time, but to the audience it doesn't. Um, so the biggest tip I can give you is like to calm your nervous system. Find ways to calm your nervous system. So I have lots of techniques that I teach my client. One of them is like if you're just about to do a speech and you're suddenly your nervous system starts to feel a bit freaked out, your heart might be going, like your palms sweating, your brain goes a little bit kind of fluttery. Because what happens to your brain basically when your nervous system detects any kind of threat, for most people that is public speaking, your nervous system will act as though you're uh, about to face a physical threat. So a lot of the blood will leave this part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain. So, and which is not good because you need that from remembering things, right? That's the the brain to mouth connection, which is quite important. Um, So one easy tip I can give people is to like move your neck. So if you go like this and scan the room, what you're doing is you're actually saying to your nervous system like there aren't any predators. You're actually literally scanning for predators, and this actually helps like settle your nervous system. And the other thing is like what you said, for people to start building up a little bit of confidence is to do that a very small thing, like offer to say something at somebody's leaving do, even a 30-second thing. Prepare it like hell and then make it sound really natural. That's how you start to build up that confidence. You try you build up small. You don't say yes to the like whatever, speaking at the O2 as your first thing,
Yes, that makes sense. And I like what you're saying about frameworks. And I just a quick plug because I do actually have a whole
Yeah,
book
yeah,
on
yeah.
frameworks. Yeah, it's a very introvert friendly book on frameworks for communication at work. And I think if you have a framework, and even if you use the same one all the time, it just means that you can relax because part of the work is done. And then if
Yeah.
you tell your brain, I'm using this framework and I'm going to answer this question, the brain will actually put enough together for you to kind of blunder through some sort of response without having
Yeah.
to kill yourself. So I am a big fan of those, and I'll drop in some frameworks or a blog post or something into
Yeah.
the notes when I do the summary. Yeah, that's really helpful. So I have put something below about questions. If anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them into the comments and we'll answer those. I know there is a lag, so there may or not be. May or may not be. We'll see. But another thing that comes up is somebody in my audience said that managers at her work keep trying to coach her to become more of an extrovert. And reading about, extroversion and introversion, sometimes what can happen is a life event can occur which makes you become a little bit more, guarded or insular or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. And in my own case, I think I did a post on it, and I talked about being I was fostered as a kid, and then I had to go back and live with my parents. And I remember as a kid I was always really chatty. I was always told off at school, you talk too much. Whereas that's kind of not the case now, unless I'm with people I'm really comfortable with. So if somebody can become more introverted through life, can somebody become more extroverted? And if they can it be engineered, is a question, right? Because that would, solve a lot of problems for many people, wouldn't it? If they could become an extrovert. I'm not saying this is the right thing, again, disclaimer, but
Yeah.
just, for the sake of asking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wonder what you and I would have gotten pretty well as kids, I reckon. Not that we don't now. We're
Yeah.
both chatty. What normally happens with a thing like that is like if somebody suddenly it was like chatty. Most like little kids are quite, our natural state is to be kind of curious and chatty and kind of upbeat, right? And then usually something happens, like for many people, it is some sort of trauma, or like how something that makes you change your opinion of yourself. There's a brilliant quote by Nathaniel Brandon that says, self-esteem is the opinion that we acquire with ourselves, that we have of ourselves. And that can come through like different life events where we go, actually, I'm the kind of person who, or I messed this up and therefore, X. Um, so, but I don't think you can change what you are. There's a really nice analogy from gardening, actually. There's a famous gardener called Beth Chatto, and she used to say, for those of you who don't know anything about gardening, so you got different types of soils, right? You get a clay soil, a sandy soil, a loamy soil. And what she said is, you can improve the quality of the soil, but you can't alter it. So you can improve the clay soil or the sandy soil, but you can't change its nature. Do you know what I mean? And I think for the person, that the questioner, if you are a naturally introverted, not because of some sort of trauma, some life event or a series event, if you're naturally introverted, you can't force yourself to become a full-on extrovert. You could try, but I think you're going to end up with some issues, because I think you're going to get quite seriously drained and quite tense, and it's not going to be good for your mental health or your physical health. So that's not to say that you can't overcome some of these traumas and the sensitizing events that are often at the heart of what's kind of made you more introverted than you naturally would be. I think, and a lot of that is to do with actually uh, building some safety back into the nervous system, so that you can become a little bit more naturally outgoing and curious. So behind me, there's a chart which probably people can't see, of the nervous system. So we've got our natural state is like us, what we are doing now. You and I, we're chatting, right? We feel quite safe. We can be kind of interested in each other's ideas, and we can be quite curious and quite outgoing. But when people get in that fight flight mode, they can be a lot more kind of shut down and a lot more fear based about like interactions and other human beings and ideas, and like public speaking and networking and things like that. So I think that's where the more safe, I will make a client feel, the more they can be more their natural self, and the more they can do things like networking and public speaking and like getting on big stages or whatever it might be that they actually want to do.
Interesting. I like that analogy about the soil, that
Yeah,
you completely replace it, it's still
yeah, yeah. Then it's not the same thing.
no, that's fair enough. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm not seeing any questions from anybody. We did have a few comments come through, so thank you so much if you're still with us. But Olivia, I've really enjoyed today's conversation. It's been great, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing your views with us. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who are out there listening. And if you are interested in any of the other sessions, please do come along or go to the link on the page and you can find out more. And Olivia, how can people get in touch with you, or if they'd like to learn more about you, can you share perhaps ways they can do that?
Yeah, so please follow me on LinkedIn. Check out my website, which is harleystreetcoach.com. I offer a free suitability call. So anybody, if you have any issues that you'd like to discuss with me, I'm happy to have a confidential chat with you. It's not a sales call, it's just a confidential chat. I don't yet know how to do, I still don't know how to do the hard sell, nor would I want to. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact me in any of those ways.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for everyone who's watching. Let me just call out some names here. We've got Beatrice, Christy, Angelos. We've also got Yvonne. So thank you. If you haven't put something in the chat, sorry, I can't see that you're here, but thank you to all those who took some of their time out of their busy day, and I hope it was valuable. So keep in touch, get in touch with Olivia, get in touch with me, and thank you for this conversation. Take care. Thanks, Olivia.